Let's get you some perspective on the recently concluded G20 Summit. I'm joined live from Lagos by policy analyst Adeniyi Saliu. Adeniyi, welcome to Africa Live. Of course, the G20 is done and dusted, and all the talk today is about the success of the summit. China, of course, calling it a historic one. Would you agree?
Yes, I do. Two things happened significantly. One, there was a consensus by the entire G20 that it's time for the world to reach an accelerated economic growth. Two, China and the US agreed that the Paris Agreement, they reached a consensus on Paris Agreement. Before now, it's been difficult. It's been something that activists have argued about. There have been comments, there have been a lot of issues around it. But somehow they reached an agreement, they were able to ratify it. So it gives an indication that there is a lot to come from that agreement. Now it also shows the way for other countries of the world who are yet to ratify the climate agreement. Now, again, it's also good for developing economies, especially in Africa, when you have the entire G20, especially the developed nations of the world, agreeing that there is a need for rapid, accelerated, and all-inclusive economic growth for the world. And this year is different because countries that were invited, that were not members of G20, were more than the usual numbers that have been invited to G20 summits in the past. So it shows that the world is serious. It shows that the economies of the world, or the biggest economies of the world, are serious about developing nations that are yet to develop, and about promoting trade amongst countries of the world, especially between the developed nations and the nations that are just developing.
And on that note, Adeniyi, of the benefits that came out of the G20 summit for developing nations, there was talk of the industrialization of Africa. But what does that translate to in terms of implementation?
Okay, well, it will depend on, first, it's going to test the resolve of the G20 and the seriousness of the G20 towards some of these ratifications, some of these agreements that are reached at summits. They need to walk the talk. Every time there has been discussions about, this is the direction, this is the agreement, but it has not been followed with adequate action to help, nations that are just developing. Two, we also will be concerned whether African nations are also ready by indication for development. So those are the issues that you have on the table immediately. But this time, the reason is different, is that there appears to be a general consensus among the G20 members, and there appears to be a general consensus among African countries that perhaps this is the right time for development. So what the G20 has done is to, one, offer a template for development, and two, indicate the readiness for African countries that are also willing to accelerate development in their individual countries to tap into. I think that this will be different from other ratifications that have been agreed, and I think that for every African nation that is also ready for development, this is an opportunity that they can tap into, and is in a way unprecedented. And that is why the Chinese people will argue that it's historic. It's historic in terms of the Paris Climate Agreement that was reached between the US and China, who are the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases. It's also historic, especially in the sense that there is now a consensus for accelerated and all-inclusive economic growth.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Adeniyi Saliu. But thank you very much. Policy analyst there live for us in Lagos on the G20 Summit and what it means for Africa.